We are back, wrapping things up on Sportsphone KNBR. Kerry Crowley hanging out with you just a moment longer. The Warriors were putting the finishing touches on a victory over the Charlotte Hornets coming out of the All-Star break with their second consecutive win, but our producer, board operator Greg Silver informs me there's been a little skirmish at the end of this game that may have extended things out for just a moment. So
let's get the elephant in the room out of the way. Draymond Green was on the bench. He did not clear the bench. He was not involved in the skirmish.
There we go. That's what everyone wanted to hear, Greg. So Draymond Green not involved, but still what? There's like 10 seconds on the clock?
There are 10 seconds on the clock. So it's funny because Steve Kerr and I think Steve Clifford as the Hornets coach were actually hugging in the center of the court doing their good game. Brandon Podziemski threw it to Lester Quinones. Quinones decided to go for a layup. And then Miles Bridges, who has been involved in some off-the-court matters, went up to block it and then pushed Lester Quinones because he didn't like the fact that he shot it with a 13-point lead, which I get it. You know, you don't have to shoot the ball, Lester, but at the same time, this was kind of a trash game all around. Let's just leave the building, okay? Like, everyone's tired. It's okay.
Yeah, I think that is the sentiment. The listeners want Dubs OT. I know that you want Dubs OT. I'm sure JD's getting ready for this show. So just to bring you up to speed on a very poor offensive game, really, for both teams tonight. The Warriors are going to improve to 29-26 with this win, so they'll get to 3 games over 500. Of course, last night's win over the Lakers was win number 501 for Steve Kerr. He gets 502 tonight, hours after signing or agreeing to that 2-year, $35 million extension, which will make him the highest paid coach in NBA history. And it seems like that's just something that he'll hold temporarily. It seems like a number of different franchises are getting to make their coach the highest paid coach right now. But Steve Kerr agrees to a 2-year, $35 million deal to remain the head coach of the Golden State Warriors through the 2025-2026 season, which is kind of the bigger story here tonight. And I'm sure it's something that JD will touch on. But to kind of speak to the fact that this has been a really poor offensive game, Steph Curry, 15 points. That led the way for the Warriors tonight. Andrew Wiggins had 14, Podziemski 13. Also, Klay Thompson 13 off the bench, 3 of 8 from beyond the arc for Thompson. Gary Payton II coming through with 12 points off the bench. Some solid minutes for him tonight. And the Warriors had, I think, something like a 12-man rotation going. So no one plays more than 31 minutes tonight. Curry and Podziemski leading the way in that category. So, Greg, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but they're still trying to sort things out right now, correct?
That is correct. We have our guy, John Dickinson, setting up right now, and I think he actually left the building possibly before this fight took place, but they went for a review for possible ejections and everything. From the Golden State Warriors standpoint, I don't think it will mean a whole lot, considering that they did not have a single starter left on the floor at the time of this occurring, and nobody cleared the bench. If anything, Steve Kerr went into the middle of the huddle, but just to ask, like, guys, what was that? What even happened?
Yeah, exactly. You hate to see a game marred at the end like this, and I'm now watching the footage, and man, the coaches were shaking it out with 12 seconds left to go in this game. Both good on the guys on the bench for staying on the bench. That's the last thing that you need. But to bring you up to speed, as Greg said, Quinones had his shot swatted with about 10 seconds left in this one. Everyone who was on the floor came in and kind of congregated under the Warriors' basket where players had to be separated. Referees had to figure things out. So I'll let John Dickinson be the one to speak to this and to the Steve Kerr extension and to everything going on with a Golden State Warriors team that will improve to 29-26 in a moment. So I'm Kerry Crowley signing off here on Sportsphone KNBR, turning things over to Dubs OT. Want to thank our man behind the board tonight, Greg Silver. Want to thank Kyle Harr for screening our phone calls and gutting sound this evening. Want to thank everyone at KNBR and all of you loyal Sports Phone listeners. Sports Phone KNBR is done. Dubs OT starts right now.
Dub Nation. Time for the real and inside story on Warriors basketball.
Curry sidestep, Curry drive, Curry flip, Curry good!
This is Dubs OT with John Dickinson on KNBR 104.5 and 6.8. Streaming live at twitch.tv/thesportsleader.
Dempsey, Micic falling down and hit the jumper. Micic touched earth. Look at the Warrior bench. They like that action. That's how you finish a quarter strong. Oh, my goodness.
Cooking, and the Warriors winning ugly as they get the job done over at Chase tonight. 97-84 is the final. We welcome you in for Dubs OT with JD, John Dickinson, here on KNBR, the sports leader. 808 KNBR is the number. Coming to you live from Harmonic Brewing in Thrive City. Kind of a wild and unfortunate ending there with the little back and forth involving Lester Quinones and Miles Bridges of the Charlotte Hornets. But all in all, after the review, and a few too many reviews at the end of this one, but the team's now shaking it out a little bit. Draymond having an animated conversation with Bridges and a couple of members, Seth Curry, Steph Curry. They're having it out, a little discussion about everything that was going on there toward the end of that one. But all in all, Warriors handle business tonight, and they win it 97-84. So they continue to stay hot now, 11-4 in the last 15. And the Warriors continue to play good basketball prior to the All-Star break and coming out of the All-Star break is Golden State now with just the one loss here over the course of the last 2.5 weeks. So good to be with you here again on a Friday night. We'll get to our question of the night. We'll let everybody load up in the YouTube chat as well, as we appreciate everybody watching on YouTube and Twitch, as always, here on KNBR, the sports leader, and Dubs OT with JD, John Dickinson, as people filing out of Chase Center, and the Warriors improving now to 29-26 on the season. And this was one that, frankly, the Warriors had to have. It didn't have to be pretty, but they had to get it, and get it the Warriors did. Sleepwalking, really, through the early part of this game, as you might expect. A little bit of already an emotional letdown off of the game nationally televised on TNT against the Lakers coming out of the break. And this really felt like, for both teams who played last night, the second of a back-to-back. Heavy legs, turnovers, poor shooting. I mean, it was really a sleepy first quarter for the Warriors. Some good defense, a lot of really bad Hornets offense. Klay Thompson got hot at the end of the quarter there, coming off the bench, hit a couple of threes, allowed the Warriors to separate in this one. And a story for the Warriors, 22-15, they led it after one, allowed just 14 points in the second quarter as Curry had a little flurry early second quarter. Warriors score just 43 in the half, but they only allow 29, 43-29 at the half. I mean, jokingly, our question of the night, I was telling the great Greg Silver back in our San Francisco studios, I said, should the question of the night be, did tonight's game set the NBA back 30 years? Because it really did. It really did, and that's not going to be the question. But it really did feel and look like that throughout the course of the game tonight. I mean, it felt like an early to mid to late 90s knockdown, drag out, not a lot of offense, just ugly, old school Eastern Conference basketball game, and just you don't see a lot of offense that poor in today's NBA. But the Warriors end up with 43, which was among their lows for a half this season. They did have 37 back in December at the Clippers, but the Hornets scored 14 in the second quarter, so that was a Warriors opponent season low for any quarter. The Warriors had held a couple of opponents to 16 at different points this season, but the 14 a low, so the Warriors doing it with defense, leading 43-29 at the intermission. And then Golden State able to come out in quarter number 3. They got the offense going a little bit, outscoring Charlotte 30-23 in that quarter. But the defense in the first half, spectacular for Golden State. And again, it was a combination, I think, of poor offense and great defense. But as far as that first half went, the Warriors did something that they hadn't done in quite some time, which was allow a team fewer than 30 points and a half. Warriors did it, you go back to the end of 2021 in December, they did it against Denver, 29-point second half for the Nuggets. That was a game the Warriors actually lost close and ugly as everybody was coming out of the pandemic in the 21-22 championship season there in December. And then the last time the Warriors held an opponent under 30 in the first half, you got to go all the way back to the first championship season with the core group here, 2014-15. Denver had 28 in the first half of that one. Yeah, Brandon Pajemski crossing dudes over. The bench just erupting at that as Pajemski with the killer ankle breaker to get a bucket there into the third. We played that coming in here, and then the Warriors enough in the fourth quarter. It was not an aesthetically pleasing quarter by any stretch as Charlotte 32-24 fourth quarter advantage, but the Warriors do enough to hold on down the stretch. Couple of reviews, the little mini dust-up that wasn't much of anything there in the closing seconds, but you add it all up and the Warriors find themselves doing exactly what they needed to do, which is keeping pace with everybody else in the Western Conference and earning victory number 29 now, so 27 games to go as the Warriors continue to stay hot. 808 KNBR is the number. The Golden State Lumber and Building Materials text line is open as well. Same number, again, 808 KNBR, and also 415-808-5627. Easy to remember there, 415-808-5627 to give us a call or shoot us a text here tonight on Dubs OT with JD, second of the back-to-back here on The Sports Leader. Again, a pleasure to be out here at Harmonic. We got Mike and Julia running the show out here at Harmonic Brewing in Thrive City as people pour out on a chilly February evening here, and watching Andrew Wiggins on the television side of things be interviewed on his 29th birthday, and another real nice game for Andrew Wiggins. When you look up at the box score at the end of the night, only 14 points, but did it efficiently. 5 of 8, hit a couple of threes, and that's the kind of game that you can really live with if you're the Warriors and Andrew Wiggins. And he's coming around, I think, of late, which is big for the Warriors as they attempt to make this run. And the big picture conversation as far as the Warriors go, can they win enough with the schedule that they have to get a legitimate shot at the 6th seed? Games like tonight have to be absolute price of admission. Games like last night when you're playing a team like the Lakers without LeBron James, absolute price of admission, have to get these wins. Take your chances against Denver, the defending champions, over at Chase on Sunday afternoon. Early start time for that one, 4 o'clock tip-off. If you got tickets for that one earlier than the normal 5:30 tip-off for national television and ESPN, and the late Sunday afternoon and evening doubleheaders that are coming for ESPN on these Sundays now that we're in a post-NFL world. So all in all, nice win. The news, though, of the evening as we get rolling here, if you want to weigh in on this game and an ugly one but an effective one for the Warriors to get to +3 to 500. But the headline of tonight happened before the game even tipped off, right before tip-off, as Woj of ESPN and then others quickly followed suit. Steve Kerr coming to an agreement with the Warriors on a 2-year contract extension that will keep him with Golden State through the 2025-26 season. So Coach Kerr had been under contract through the remainder of this season, and we were wondering here a month and a half ago, is this thing starting to go down the path of the Bob Myers route where, Bob repeatedly had said he wasn't worried about it, but then at the same time, nothing was really happening. There was no real action. I know there had been murmurs that things were headed toward a potential resolution here over the course of the last month. I think the Warriors playing better over this last month and getting on a little bit of a run have made it an easy call. But here's the reality of the situation. Steve Kerr was always going to be the head coach of the Golden State Warriors as long as Steph Curry wanted Steve Kerr to be the head coach of the Golden State Warriors. And as long as Steve Kerr wanted to do it, which I think for the most part everybody would would say that Steve would want to be able to come back and have a couple of more years. So Woj reporting a 2-year, $35 million contract extension. That makes Kerr the highest paid coach in NBA history when you look at the average annual value. Now, Greg Popovich does make more, but Popovich currently is also the president of basketball operations for the Spurs and the head coach. Eric Spoelstra is right at about $15 million. So Steve Kerr with the 4 titles and everything that he's brought to the table here over the last decade, he gets the much-deserved contract extension that keeps him with the Warriors and keeps him aligned with Stephen Curry and even Draymond Green. Now, you've got Steph, who's under contract for the remainder of this year, plus 2 more. You've got Draymond, who's under contract for the remainder of this year, plus 3 more, as he finds himself in the first year of that 4-year extension that he signed. And what we will make our official question of the night is, does this set the table now for the Warriors, given the reports surrounding Klay Thompson and his willingness to be open-minded toward maybe taking on a lesser role with the Warriors to stay moving forward? Now that you've got Steph for 2, Draymond for 3, Steve for 2, the last box that would need to be checked as far as keeping the band back together would be, can you get Klay Thompson to do a 2-year deal to come back at a reasonable price? I know it had been reported 2 and 48 somewhere. If you could get Klay on the 2 to 3 year plan there, I think the Warriors still continue to double and in many cases triple down on this core. Now there's some young pieces in Kuminga and Podziemski who seem to be coming along and being able to help this group now, but also develop into the kinds of players that can have a pretty bright future. But I think you've got to like the fact that this is not going to linger into the off season, where you're kind of wondering, what's going to happen with Steve Kerr. Will he or won't he come back? So to end that contentiousness, I think is huge, and it allows the entire organization, the team now, to just focus on everything moving forward. I think it was also really good that Coach Kerr and Jonathan Kuminga had aired things out in the manner that they aired things out, given the report from early January where Kuminga had lost confidence. And look, that wasn't going to matter. Like, Steve Kerr would not get let go or not retained because Jonathan Kuminga had lost confidence in him. But the fact that those two were able to seemingly work it out, it's led to better play from Kuminga. It's led to better play and a better rotation for this Warriors team, top to bottom. And so when you look at it, I think, cooler heads kind of prevail there. Steph gets his guy. The Steph, Klay, Draymond trio is intact. All of a sudden, the balance as far as youth and older players is, more aligned than it had been at any point. And now it starts to feel like the Warriors are going all in here on this next 2 years plus this year. See what they've got this year, believe in the young core that they have moving forward, potentially adding to it, or the Warriors' ability to maybe make some moves in this offseason that can get them back to trying to be championship contention level again if they prove to come up short as far as that goes throughout the remainder of this season. But credit to Steve Kerr, credit to the Warriors organization for not letting this thing linger or fester or bleed into the depths of an offseason where you never really know what's going to happen. But again, great Greg Silver, fine producer and co-host here of Dubs OT and Just Dubs here on KNBR, the sports leader, he put it out there, and Greg will bring you into the conversation here for just a minute to kind of welcome you to the show. But I thought you said it as well as anybody on social media. The most important Warriors players wanted Steve Kerr to be around, so Steve Kerr is around. And it really did boil down to it being as simple as that. As long as Coach Kerr wanted to stay, but all of the hints over the last couple of months have been that he did, in fact, want to stay.
Yeah, and I think my answer to anybody that is upset about the contract extension is cry about it, because it's
who would be upset? Like, let's be real. And I don't mean to come down your road, but seriously, we don't have to. Like, who would realistically be upset as if having Steve Kerr around for 2 more years was going to put the Warriors in a more vulnerable position to have success, or in a less apt position more clearly to have success? I mean, get out of here with that.
2 months ago,
that's a bunch of
2 months ago it was a larger crowd than it is now.
Yeah, it's a lunatic fringe. I'll say it. I mean, it is. It really is a lunatic fringe that believe that Steve Kerr was, messing this whole thing up and preventing the Warriors from reaching their potential and holding young players back. And I agree with you, though. It is a lot easier when this team gets on a hot streak, when this team does seemingly have a more orderly rotation, when this team is getting contributions from young players and veteran players. Like, Kerr wasn't going anywhere regardless of any of that. Maybe it would have changed some of the players that were here moving forward, but the fact that this team this franchise could have done better than Steve Kerr moving forward. I mean, give me a freaking break, Greg. Come on.
I'm on your side here, JD, and what I would say to that, because we broke the news to Kerry Crowley on Sports Phone when the Woj report was announced about Steve Kerr's contract extension, was basketball is kind of one of those very rare sports where a true superstar has a certain kind of influence that is going to trump just about everything. Like LeBron James, we've seen the kind of crazy impact he has had for 17 of his 20 years in the NBA. I mean, people love the nickname Le GM because of how much his decision-making holds power, as it should, by the way. So the reason I say cry about it is because it doesn't matter where your opinion ever was. If Steph Curry wanted Steve Kerr to be the coach and Steve Kerr was willing to stick around, then this proposition of Steve Kerr getting a contract extension was never really in question.
No, and look, there wasn't going to be a scenario in my mind where Steve Kerr wasn't going to be the head coach as long as he wanted to be, because you knew that Stephen Curry wanted him to be. Like, there wasn't going to be this, like, if you might as well, if you were going to go down that path, just tear the whole thing down to the studs at that point. And Joe Lacob's done everything that he possibly can, Greg, to say that he doesn't want that to be the case as far as the future, that he doesn't want to be, in a tear down, completely bottoming out type of a scenario. And fortunately, it looks like the Warriors, at least for this year, aren't going to be in that position.
And you also have to look at it this way, JD, because this whole discussion isn't me saying, well, Steve Kerr was never the problem and he never did anything wrong. But I think when you have to look at the type of leader they've needed to get through parts of this season, why would you want to just tear it down when you consider real life matters, like not just all the heartbreaking wins and now finally turning a corner, also things like the passing of Decky and having to navigate through real life trauma and real life tragedy? I mean, I don't think it's ever made sense to have Steve Kerr just get dumped off in the middle of the season. Now, I think that a couple months ago, we were having the conversation of, I could see him choosing to step down on his own after the season if things just continue to go more and more south. I don't ever see why the solution would have been, well, the season's a wash, so let's just end it now and leave Steph Curry out on an island. And Draymond Green has been unreliable and unhinged at times, and Klay Thompson has been frustrated with his own playing ability. Like, that was only going to just send things in a double, triple down arrow from there. And why would you do that when the Warriors are finally finding a little bit of stability on a basketball court?
Yeah, and look, it's an easier decision now, as we talked about. And how about the money? Steve Kerr, 2 years, $35 million as far as the extension goes. And look, you can reevaluate it as you will reevaluate everything. I mean, look, let's be honest. The Warriors at this point are a year-to-year proposition, but the one thing we have seen enough of this year is the fact that Stephen Curry is still playing at an all-time great level, and he projects to play at that level again next year. So again, as long as he's going to be around, then Steve Kerr was going to be around. But it does so the stability component of that for me is the most important factor. It's just one less thing that you have to worry about as you start to move toward an offseason where, who knows? I don't have a real good feel for where the Warriors are going to be this offseason because I don't think anybody knows how this regular season plus potential playoffs is going to wind up. I mean, this team suddenly has people in the Bay Area, daydreaming of pushing 45 to 48 wins, maybe finishing the season winning 20 out of the last 28 or 30 of the last 40, which is something that would have been, completely unforeseen going back a couple of weeks ago. They're going to have to stay healthy. They're going to have to continue to play at the level that they have here of late, but it's something on the table that I don't think most people would have believed was going to be on the table just a couple of weeks ago. So 808 KNBR, the phone number. It's Dubs OT with JD here on KNBR, the sports leader, 415-808-5627. The phone number to give us a call or shoot us a text here. And let's get to the phone lines. And Lars in Humboldt, who tips us off tonight here on Dubs OT on the sports leader. Hey, Lars.
Hey, how's it going? I think you hit the nail on the head earlier. They're looking really good with both the young and the old talent. And I think Lacob's choice to give Kerr that contract just shows why he's one of the, if not the best owner in sports. He's not willing to settle. He's giving Kerr that contract. He's giving Steph that contract that he's on right now because he knows these guys have made some money. He's not willing to settle. He has faith, but not blind faith. He was still able to get a new GM to replace Bob Myers on a first and a second round draft pick. And, he has a really successful brand, this Golden State brand. And I think he set it up to both be successful here in the NBA and in the Bay Area. He even has a WNBA team. It wouldn't be surprising if he got another team, whether it be the A's or some other team. I think he's one of the best owners because he has a successful brand. He's not willing to settle, and he knows how to take risks and be aggressive and be loyal without having any of his mistakes blow up in his face too bad.
Yeah, I think that's a great point, Lars. He's not willing to settle, but he's also not going to be overly reactionary, despite what some of the reports are about his happiness level with certain aspects of the franchise or the way things are going, right? Like he lets it be known, I think, in his own way if he isn't happy about something, but not being happy about something doesn't mean immediate wholesale reactionary changes, which I think is important. He's shown a patience that a lot of other owners who are as involved and as interested and enjoy the process of putting the basketball part of the business together would do. And so I think he deserves a lot of credit for that. The patience that he's shown to stick with those that have helped bring championships for his franchise and championships here to the Bay Area. Good phone call, Lars. Thanks, man.
Thank you. Yeah.
Appreciate it. 808 KNBR is the number. It is Dubs OT with JD here on The Sports Leader as we are off and rolling here on a Friday night. Pleasure to be at Harmonic Brewing. We got Julia and Mike here. I am having a Kolsch, so cheers, as this is a long day. Sitting in for Papa and Lund 10-2 here on The Sports Leader, and now having a cold one with the folks here at Harmonic. Good crowd on hand, celebrating an ugly Warriors victory, but a victory nonetheless for Golden State as they improved to 29-26 on the season. But yeah, I think for as much as the reports are Joe Lacob loved James Wiseman and didn't want to give him up and believes Kuminga could be a future star and maybe wasn't happy at the way that things were rolling for this team a few weeks back, the belief that this was a much better basketball team than they had performed. The wondering what's going on. Why is, Kerr maybe coaching some of these younger players so hard. And so I think, that the Warriors have never been uncomfortable, Greg, having difficult conversations, having the conversations where maybe it gets a little heated, right? Maybe it gets a little heated between, minds that are throwing things against the wall to try and, figure out what the next decision. Differing opinions have always been welcome with this organization, and a willingness to put everything on the table. But just because you put everything on the table in a private room doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to make the most caustic and reactionary decision. And I think the Warriors have been as successful as they've been over the last decade for the moves that maybe they've thought about making but haven't made as much as the moves that they have ultimately pulled the trigger on.
And that's what good organizations do, JD. Like, I've been on the record many times over saying that one of the things that I've loved about Steve Kerr the most is emotional intelligence, because it's hard to manage a lot of egos and personalities in the NBA. And one of the things that I've loved about the Warriors organization as a whole the most is their lack of pressing the panic button. I mean, there's even been times where I'm thinking, okay, yeah, just this isn't it, or you got to make a move. And I know it's hard to be patient, and I know that people demand a lot when you have a Hall of Famer leading the way and 3 Hall of Famers on the roster at least. So, yeah, the stakes are going to be high when you bring 4 championships in 10 years, but that's what good organizations do, is they have the hard conversations. They don't get overly reactive. They try to be as calculating as possible when making these tough decisions. And I think that I don't know what this Warriors season is going to end up being. I don't know if they get into a playoff series. I don't know if they're competitive in a playoff series. I don't know if they go beyond what they achieved last year on paper. But we can all say at this point that the last month of the season has been a far cry from what the season was turning into in the first half and the first 42 games, because that was just ugly and downhill, and it looked like it was only going to get worse.
Yeah, it did, and it's been a hell of a turnaround to this point. And again, it now appears like, I would have been really reluctant even a week ago to say, can this team go 20-8 in the final 28? Well, they've now done it, going 11-4 in the last 15. Can they do that 10-4 2 more times, basically starting with tonight? I'm starting to think maybe they can. And I don't know where you stand on this, and we can throw it out there to the listeners at 808 KNBR, and we'll dig into the YouTube chat here coming up momentarily. But I now believe that this Warriors foundation, the group that they have playing the regular rotation minutes right now, and I would add Chris Paul into that, because I am not among those who believe Chris Paul's going to come back and screw it up, although Steve Kerr's going to have to play him in the 20s, I think, low to mid-20s, not high 20s,
I'm right there
low
with
30s. You. But so there is going to be, like Chris Paul can help, but you can't have Chris Paul playing so much that he's hurting some of the contributions of the players that have helped them, win this 11 out of the last 15. But I'm starting to believe that this core, Greg, is the best, most sustainable rotation/group that the Warriors have had in these last 2 seasons, meaning the 2 seasons since they won the championship in 2022.
Yeah, I went into today telling myself that my opinion was not going to change a whole lot on the Warriors based on tonight, unless it was for the worse. Like, unless this game went really bad and this was the type of game you lose 97-84 at home, then we'd be having a different conversation. I don't think that beating a Hornets team that, yes, they were on a nice streak, but by and large has really struggled this year, it doesn't tell me a crazy amount. I think this Denver game coming up is really interesting. I think that's going to be a great test for where Golden State is at, because they are at home and they have had Denver on the ropes before and couldn't finish it. What I will say is that despite the ugliness and all the turnovers, 22 turnovers tonight, by the way, still 28 assists, though, so move the ball okay. But my point there being, like, they were still poised enough to get the job done. It was just kind of all around ugly tonight.
The game, it was hideous. It was one of the worst games of the year. I mean, let's just be honest. It was one of the worst games of the year, and I kind of expected that, given the fact that even though the Lakers didn't have LeBron last night, the Warriors came out, national television, buttoned up. Steph Curry set the tone. They wanted to make sure that they weren't going to lose that game last night at home. Tonight, it's like, all right, yeah, Charlotte's won 4 in a row. Big whoop. They're 14-41. Oh, Grant Williams has been really good. Who cares? Like, come on. Like, forget about that. Like, this Charlotte team is terrible, and they don't have a lot of offensive firepower. You look at the lineup that they put out there at the beginning of the game, and you're thinking the Warriors should be able to win this game any possible way they have to tonight. But I was expecting a letdown, and I thought it was funny because Steve Kerr before the game addressed that in his pregame press conference. He said, the good news is, and I'm quoting him, he told the team, the good news is we're now good enough to have a letdown game, which I thought was hilarious. We weren't good enough to have a letdown game a couple of weeks ago, but now we are because they were playing so well. So I think he kind of anticipated it. Again, the energy in the building is just going to be different on a Friday night against Charlotte than it is against the Lakers for a TNT Thursday night coming out of the All-Star break. It's a game you got to win, but it's the old zero upside game, and I think when you look at the Warriors' ability to again, handle business, I know this game, I guess the Warriors did wind up covering late. Well, they covered if you had 12.5. And 13.5 didn't cover, but if you had 12.5, the Warriors were able to cover there at the end after all hell broke loose. Lester Quinones with the big layup that set everybody off and led to his own ejection and Grant Williams and Miles Bridges and everything that was going on there at the end of the game. But I kind of thought ugly tonight for the Warriors. I didn't think 97-84 ugly. I didn't think 22 turnover ugly. Charlotte had 19 turnovers. The one thing the Warriors did well is they got more off the 19 turnovers that Charlotte had 18 points than the Hornets did, and the 22 turnovers the Warriors had 15 points. But I kind of thought tonight was going to be an unaesthetically pleasing. There's about 14 or 15 games, Greg, in the NBA season. I was talking to the great I was talking to Kendra Andrews of ESPN about this pregame. We were kind of sitting there on the court, and I said, Kendra, there's about 15 games every year that just get lost in the schedule, right? Like they're positioned in the middle of a couple of games that actually matter or you're excited about. Like there's like 10 to 15 games that just get forgotten when it's all said and done. Tonight, one of those games that I think it gets plugged into the lost and or forgotten category. 808 KNBR. I want to get a couple more calls here as they pop up on my board. Let's go to Drew and Tracy next here on the Sports Leader. It's Dubs OT with JD here on KNBR on a Friday night. What's up, Drew?
Hey, what's going on, JD? I'm going to start off by saying this was an ode to a man named Bubba Sparks. This game was ugly.
It was ugly, man. What's up, Drew Down? It's Drew Down. Come on, put Drew Down on my board. What's going on, Drew Down?
Yeah, it's rookies over here, but it was just an ugly game on offense. 22 turnovers. Curry was struggling, 5 of 14, 4 turnovers. I thought Pajemski had a nice floor game, 13, 6, and 6, no turnovers. I had at least 3 or 4 charges that he drew, which obviously shouldn't be a surprise, but he just continues to generate extra possessions for this team. And GP2. How about Pajemski dropping dude at the end of the third quarter? Like that was. Yeah. I about hit the floor, man. I couldn't believe it, and I think Gary Payton II felt the same way, man. Gary Payton was like in disbelief that Pajemski put the ankle breaker on what was it, Misic of the Hornets. Unbelievable play there in the end of the third. That was a super fun play. People continue to keep doubting this kid, and he just keeps finding a way to, impress us more and more every game. I thought GP2, another big impact, 12 points in 11 minutes. He was mic'd up. When you hear him talking on the court, he just brings some energy and just a different vibe to this team that I think that they really need. So it's cool when he gets mic'd up and you kind of hear him on the court. He's talking, he's chirping, he's He's active. He's an agitator. So it's just I love having GP2 back, and just he makes an impact whenever he's on the court lately. And then two-way Wiggs is back, man. He was playing great defense. Only I think it was 5 of 8, but he didn't take a ton of shots, but he was efficient when he took them. So it's just great to see Wiggins bullying people in the lane, and just great to see him playing like he was a couple years ago. Clay wasn't great. He made some shots off the bench. Jonathan Kuminga wasn't great, but I did like the fact that he still had 7 boards and 6 assists. So he wasn't making shots,
active.
But I felt like he was still exactly active, and he's been a little bit more, I think, not as aggressive, but he's also looking to make plays for his teammates. So he just kind of find that balance of when to take over and when to make plays. But I still thought he made an impact, even though he didn't score a lot. And then just like I said, an ugly win, but I think with Dre, Wiggins, JK, GP2, I think they were able to get a lot of stops, even when the offense was kind of struggling and sputtering there. And even Lester Quinones is no pushover, obviously, like you saw at the end. He's not a pushover on defense, and TJD still finds a way to rebound and make an impact. So I think the story of the game was just find a way to win, even when you're struggling on offense. Doesn't matter. Find a way, dig deep, get a W. At this point, I'm not putting any style points on it. We got to keep stacking up wins. So find a way to win by any means necessary. It was ugly, but it counts as a W in the win column. So let's see if we can make some noise in Denver. Thanks, JD.
Yeah, appreciate it, Drew Down. Checking in from Tracy, 808 KNBR, the number. We'll go ahead and pause here. We'll get to Matt coming back on the other side. But a couple of lines open, 415-808-5627. Warriors get the win tonight at Chase. They beat the Hornets 97-84. This is Dubs OT with JD, KNBR 104.5 and 680, the sports leader.
We weren't good enough to have a letdown game a couple weeks ago, but now we are. We're playing well on both ends.
station. This is the real and inside story on Warriors basketball. Dubs OT with John Dickinson continues. Streaming live at twitch.tv/thesportsleader.
Absolutely. I'm told that Steve Kerr's agreed to a new 2-year, $35 million contract to continue as the coach of the Warriors. His deal was set to expire after this season. $17.5 million a year. That's a record annually for an NBA coach. Greg Popovich makes more, but he's also the team president. But for Golden State, lining up Steve Kerr's contract now with Steph Curry, both through the 25-26 seasons, but his agents at Priority Sports literally got this deal done tonight. They've been negotiating for months, but put their leadership structure in place now. Mike Dunleavy Jr., their GM, and now Steve Kerr stays on in Golden State, a record $17.5 million a year annual salary.
All right, there's Woj from ESPN earlier breaking the news. Steve Kerr sticking around, 2-year contract extension. That news dropping right before tip-off tonight. $17.5 million per year for the next 2 years, $2 and $35 for Steve Kerr. Him and Stephen Curry now aligned, both signed for the remainder of this season, plus 2 more. So that's through the 2025-26 season. Stability in the Bay. I know we talked about it earlier. Joe Lacob, he didn't want Bob Myers to leave. I think that was pretty apparent at the press conference in which Bob had stepped down. But the Warriors have been able to pivot and go with the internal hire and add Mike Dunleavy Jr., and it's worked out to this point. A couple of real productive draft picks for Mike Dunleavy Jr. in his first draft. But the last thing you wanted was to be trying to find a new head coach, and the Warriors won't have to, because they're able to pay the man his money. 2 years and $35 million for Steve Kerr. 808 KNBR, the number if you want to react to that. It's got to be a win-win, I think, given the way the Warriors have played of late and given the way things have started to really fall into place for this Warriors team, really going back to February 5th in Brooklyn. That was the turning point for this Warriors team. You look at their ability to close out that road trip with 3 wins. They come back and win the close one against Phoenix. They win in Utah comfortably for a 5th straight win. Then they drop the one against the Clippers where they had the lead there down the stretch. So 5 of 6, 6 of 7, 7 of 8, now 8 of the last 9 for the Warriors as they come out of the break, winning the first 2 against the Lakers and Charlotte. And this team has the Bay now believing that they have the potential to make a run and maybe even get to the 6th seed regardless, though, of the seeding, the ability to maybe make a run in the playoffs. And I think it feels a lot more sustainable than even the group that they had at the end of last year when they cobbled things together for a quick winning streak that got them to that 6th seed. Going to have to be a lot better to be the 6th seed this year. Maybe you're playing well, but you don't quite get there. But I think this combination of players with the addition of Chris Paul looming, I think is as solid as it gets. So good on the Warriors and good on Joe Lacob for getting Steve Kerr locked up. If you want to react to that, we can. 808 KNBR. We'll get into the YouTube chat coming up as well. It's a pleasure to be here at Harmonic Brewing in Thrive City. And we do have some people on the phone lines that want to talk, so let's get right to it. Matt in San Francisco is next here on the Sports Leader. What's going on tonight, Matt?
Hey, man, just curious, like, what turned the corner here tonight? All of a sudden, we're favored to get into the 3 seed, or the 6 seed, rather, and everybody's all excited about it. But there's been a ton of negative talk lately, and who's in the mix for saying, "Hey, listen, we missed the boat on this, and let's give the Warriors a chance"?
Well, it's 8 of the last 9 in the win column that's changed the conversation, and it's how they're doing it that I think has changed the conversation, Matt. It's combinations that either hadn't been able to play together because Draymond Green got himself suspended, or hadn't played well in the case of Kuminga and Wiggins, those two together. It wasn't working really in any other iteration. Steve Kerr, I think, was a little bit unwilling to pull the trigger on Podziemski over Klay Thompson, believing that Klay Thompson wouldn't accept the bench role. Now he seemingly is accepting that. Podziemski seems like a perfect fit with the other group. Like, all of a sudden, the pieces fit, and the pieces not only fit, but they're winning games, which this team wasn't doing really since the first 8 or 9 games of the season. So, I mean, they've changed the calculus, Matt, with the way that they've played. And so I don't think it's necessarily that anybody got it wrong. It's just that this is a different combination than we've seen at any point that's getting it right for the Warriors. And it makes you think that this team's got some action right now with 8 of the last 9 and 11 of 15 and all of that, Matt.
I think they got it wrong. I think people got it wrong. I think they should have been on the Warriors from the get-go and had confidence in Steve Kerr and the organization. And I think a lot of people got down on him in the wrong way. And I think they're paying for it now in their opinions that they expressed earlier in the season. So I'm super excited, and let's go Warriors.
Yeah, fair enough, Matt. I mean, there's no doubt. I mean, there were people calling for Steve Kerr to be fired. I mean, there were people calling to trade Klay Thompson and tear the whole thing down to the studs and all of that. Matt, thank you very much. Appreciate the call as we let Matt go here on Dubs OT on KNBR, the sports leader. Good phone call from Matt in the city. But, yeah, I mean, it becomes, people can admit they're wrong or not admit they're wrong or whatever. I mean, I was kind of in the wait-and-see approach with this team. I didn't love the Kuminga-Wiggins combination without Draymond, but I was somebody that wanted to see it with Draymond. I'm on record as saying that, going back to the early part of even January. But, this team just had been hamstrung from really having the opportunity to be the best version of themselves because Draymond, in a lot of ways, screwed up the season for about 2 months. I mean, let's just be honest. The Warriors got off to a 6-2, 6-3 start, and they were doing it differently than they're doing it now. But Draymond mixed it up with Donovan Mitchell and then the melee with Rudy Gobert, and all of a sudden he's out for a couple of weeks and then comes back and he gets into it with Nurkic. Like, Draymond Green basically wrecked 2 months of the Warriors season. And then he's come back and he's been a different guy. They went through tragedy with their coaching staff and the passing of Dejan Miljovic, and they've been able to rebound from it. They've been able to come back and try and honor Coach Decky the best they can. I mean, this team's been through a lot this year, but I think they were unable to be the truest version of themselves in large part November, December, early part of January because Draymond had rendered himself useless. Draymond came back, and all of a sudden, the things Kuminga was doing when Draymond was out mattered more. And Kuminga went from, leveled up from a 15-point-a-game guy to a 25-point-a-game guy there for a stretch. And all of a sudden, Wiggins could play with Kuminga, which hadn't happened before. So it all started to fall into place here right when the Warriors really needed it to fall into place. William in Berkeley is next here on the Sports Leader. What's going on, William?
Hey there. Guys, I was at the game tonight. I think what we're seeing here is the birth of a Steve Nash-esque player. Podziemski coming in as a freshman, a rookie, right? He's got these incredible skills, ball handling skills, playmaking skills. He's tossing assists out the wazoo. I'm worried when Chris Paul comes back, how is he going to displace Podziemski, right? We're going to see him displace Podziemski. Like, what's going to happen? We've seen the birth of a star, and then we're going to see him go back on the bench? That's my question for you guys.
He's not coming off the bench. Podziemski's not going anywhere. Chris Paul's coming off the bench. I'll let you finish, but I'll just say this. Chris Paul comes back. Chris Paul's going to be the backup point guard. I know Podziemski had been playing some backup point guard of late. Not really a lot over the last 15. Excuse me. But I think Podziemski's still going to start, and he's still going to get pretty close to the minutes that he's been getting. If anything, I think Quinones, his minutes are probably going to go down a little bit. And Steve Kerr's going to have to limit Chris Paul, I think, to anywhere between 15 and the low 20s in terms of overall minutes. I do think there's a way to do it, that can benefit this team. It may mean Podziemski's out there at the end of the game and Chris Paul isn't. So be it.
Yeah.
But I think the one thing that this team has found over the last few weeks, really month, is the egos have been put aside. The history has been put aside. Now, whether that's been by force or by choice, Draymond had to come correct when he came back because he had hurt the team in his own way. Klay Thompson has had to accept the fact that he is a lesser player than he was and has to come off the bench. These guys have been forced, some of them. Wiggins got benched before he got put back in. Kuminga earned his spot and then lost it and then earned it back, right? So I think there has been a real balance of guys are earning it now. Exactly. And everybody, you could almost say, has had to take a lesser role and then earned a better role or had to figure it out. So I think the Warriors are in a much better place to be able to handle it, and I think Steve Kerr has to tell Chris Paul, Draymond's had to do this, and Klay's had to do that, and Kuminga's had to do this, and these are champions and future Hall of Famers just like you, some of these players. So you have to be willing to accept maybe a little bit of a lesser role if it can help this team win. I think Chris Paul will do it, and I don't think he's going to hinder Podziemski. I really don't. I think Podziemski's been too good.
Kudos to Podziemski, man. I just think we're seeing the birth of a Steve Nash, just pure passer. It's really cool to watch.
No, he's been tremendous. I mean, he has been tremendous, and there are new parts of his game, William, and thank you for the phone call. New parts of his game each and every night that we see him break out. I mean, tonight he's breaking ankles, Greg. What? Again, it's a highlight play. And sometimes you make too much of the highlight plays, but Podziemski's got a swag to his game, but it's not only flash and dash. He's got a lot of substance from the charges, the connectivity, the willingness to pass, but also the belief that he's a hell of a player. And I think that confidence goes a long way toward his ability to be as successful as he's been in his rookie year.
Well, you know what I took from tonight, because this is not the first time Podziemski's had a stat line like this. Struggled to shoot the ball from three, but was very effective. I think he had 12 points, 6 rebounds, 6 assists, or something like that. So I like that Podziemski can have bad shooting nights and still be very impactful as a player, because I think that he can become a better shooter. I think that if you're a rookie and you're struggling to shoot the three and you got to do the whole 82-game season and it's different on your legs, that comes with time. If you told me Brandon Podziemski not shooting the three-pointer was going to be his biggest weakness, but he was doing all this other stuff so well, including, this guy just craves putting his body on the line and drawing charges to a point where I'm almost every time Podziemski is taking the charge, I just get ready for a little pop, a pour, and a sit, because it's becoming a game at this point. And no, I agree. I like the Steve Nash-esque, because Santa Clara has reinvigorated the NBA impact.
Yeah, I get where our guy William was going. I don't see Steve Nash yet, but the guy, I think, because he's a lefty. Goran Dragic is a player that I think he's been compared to, I think, because he's a lefty and not always the best shooter, but somebody that can get into the lane. He's willing to rebound. But yeah, I get the Santa Clara connection and the Nash, but I'll say this: Nash early in his career did not look like he was going to be Nash that he became, and so you never want to rule out any player's potential to have a ceiling. But Nash was going to be a true point guard that could shoot the ball, I think, from the jump in his NBA career. I don't know that Podziemski's ever going to be a true point guard, but he has the ability to, I think, be a combo guard, definitely a backup-type point guard, and somebody that's already proving that he can be a starting two, and he plays well alongside Steph Curry. He gives a nice balance to that other unit as far as the starters with Wiggins and Kuminga and Draymond out there with Steph, and it's all really clicking in a big time way right now for Brandon Podziemski, and he's been a huge part of why the Warriors are having the success that they're having. 808 KNBR, the number, the Golden State Lumber and Building Materials text line. Greg, I wanted to read a couple of texts here. 2 quick texts. We asked for some reaction on the Steve Kerr 2-year, $35 million contract extension. And there were 2 right off the bat that just juxtaposed. 408, surprised Lacob is satisfied with mediocrity. That's number 1. And then right after that one from the 650, Morrow in the 650, money well spent on the new Kerr contract extension, keeping him with Stephen Curry for the next couple of years. So those folks are out there, the ones that think somehow Steve Kerr is a mediocre head coach, as silly as that may be in reality.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I think a couple months ago there was a very angry crowd out there. I do have to laugh a little bit because this is not just Warrior Land. Like, this is the common modern discourse, digital, social media age fandom that we're all exposed to now. But I laugh at how it goes from Steve Kerr should be in jail for how he mismanaged the rotation to, guys, I think the 5th ring is coming. Like, I think it's here.
Yeah, people are fired up about it, no doubt. And our Dubs OT question of the night, I want to make sure we revisit that on Twitter and Threads as well. I know you keep tabs on the Threads numbers. Typically, I keep tabs on the Twitter numbers.
Oh, I'm all over both tonight.
Our question of the night, does Steve Kerr's contract extension set the table for Klay Thompson to sign a 2-year deal as well? The options, yes, core stays together, not necessarily, and no, Klay wants the bag. And to this point, 61% of the vote, yes, the core stays together. This sets the tone. I wouldn't have believed that 2 weeks ago, but with the reporting of the last couple of weeks that Klay may be open to a lesser role and potentially, this wasn't reported, but potentially lesser money, although lesser role does indicate lesser money in terms of what would be coming Klay Thompson's way. But I think you have to I think the door is open to Klay Thompson maybe reading the room, seeing that the Warriors are getting their house in order, and if he is willing to accept that lesser role at a more cost-effective rate for the Warriors, I think it's a win-win for everybody, because here's the reality. Steph and Klay and Wiggins and Kuminga and Draymond with Pajemski, with Trace Jackson-Davis now, with GP2. The Warriors have a nice 8-9-man Chris Paul coming back for at least this season at some point here in the next week or so. This team has formulated a rotation, a core, a top 6 or 7 that I think they can position themselves to go into 24-25 with some augmentation, and believe, based on the way that they've played here over the course of the last month, if it finishes this way, that they've got a little action for next year as well, Greg.
Yeah, and before I even elaborate on that discussion, I just want to go to the Threads poll as well and marvel at how similar the spread is across both platforms. About a quarter of the votes over on Threads, but 62% whereas in the boat of yes, the core stays together. Another 30% said not necessarily, and then the remaining 8% said no, Klay wants the money. We actually had a very detailed reply from one of the accounts as well, who was in the not necessarily camp, because he does believe that Steve Kerr would love to have Klay, and if he is able to embrace that bench role and create a new skill set. But he also is thinking about the fact that some team might want to offer him a little bit more money than what this new role might warrant.
Yeah, that is also, I think, something that's been reported in the last couple of days, right? It's the fact that, hey, there are going to be potential suitors, and I think we've maybe written it off, at least I have, that maybe there are some out there that are not going to want to give Klay Thompson closer to the contract that he wants, as opposed to what the Warriors offer may be. And look, the Warriors may have to bump it up from $250 or $248. Like, I'm not saying that's necessarily going to get it done. There is a little bit of a what you've brought to the table tax for Klay Thompson that the Warriors, I do think, are going to have to pay, especially if he can drum up another offer. But there's a big difference between what you've done for this franchise tax and 4 years and $170 million, right? Like, there is an in-between ground between maybe it's 3-80, maybe it's 3-75, something like that. But it's a balance between, what's been reported the Warriors offered, although not confirmed, and what has been reported that Clay potentially would believe that he still is capable of earning in terms of close to a max deal, or believing that he's close to a max level player there. So, yeah, I mean, not so fast as far as just assuming that this thing is going to get done. I still think the market is going to have to dictate a lot of, even if Clay ultimately decides to stay, what he eventually winds up getting paid. The market will dictate that based on his ability to go out and try to drum up some interest from other teams. And the reports have indicated that there aren't a lot of people who believe around the league, I've read, that Klay Thompson's just done, washed, can't play anymore, right? It may need to be accepting of a lesser role, but in that lesser role, I don't know where you stand on this. I think Klay Thompson could be a hell of a sixth man for the next 5 years. I think he could be an exceptional bench player to help winning teams for quite some time. I don't think the wind down as far as him maybe being a starter and a number 2 option, I think those days are probably over. But as far as being a productive bench player and a top 5 player on a team, and a team that, or a player that a team really counts on, I think that's 100% on the table.
Yeah, I don't think there's an exponential decline in the way that some of us have sort of pictured that out to be. I don't think it's there's a giant curve and it starts, and once you go downhill, it's just a steep drop. I think there is a drop, which we've seen, but then you can kind of plateau off of that drop and be a very steady, solid player and contributing in a meaningful way on a good team. So I don't think that this version of Klay Thompson is only a temporary thing that can last maybe 12 months. I think he could do this for a few years.
Let's get to Mark and Millbrae, 808 KNBR. The phone number, it's Dubs OT with JD, live at Harmonic Brewing in Thrive City, 415-808-5627. We're going to keep this thing rolling until 11 o'clock. Mark, what's on your mind tonight? Thank you for calling in here on Dubs OT on the Sports Leader.
What's up, guys? Yeah, I wanted to talk about the win here and then contract extension for Kerr. As far as the game tonight, I know Charlotte is an awful team, but still they're playing pretty good basketball, coming in on a 4-game win streak. And I know it was an ugly, low-scoring game, but sometimes you got to win with defense, and the Warriors handled their business. They could have messed around and allowed Charlotte to possibly make it a close game, and maybe try to think confidently they could steal the game in the end. But Warriors, I like the way they just really just shut them down and really had probably their best defensive efforts of the season tonight in against a team you should handle, coming off a big win over your nemesis like the Lakers. They took care of business, and I know it was an ugly game, but still sometimes you got to win like that tonight. As far as Kerr goes, great job by Joe Lacob getting that contract extension locked up, well-deserved. But I got to say, honestly speaking, this season I think Kerr has done a B- job. I don't like the way he jacked around Kuminga all season until he needed him in the end. The way they screwed around with Chase Jackson-Davis and just the lineup changes. Overall, guys, we got to be honest about Kerr. I just think that B- at this point, and hopefully we'll see how the season plays out, but he's steadily moving that grade up with the way he's handled it, and finally realizing that Trey Jackson-Davis, Podensky are the guys of the future, and Kuminga is one of your core second-best player right now besides Curry. So I hope that goes. As far as Clay goes, guys, I think he's got to read the room with his agent. This is the best place for you. You can be an elite six-man coming off the bench like Ray Allen type and extend your career, and you're going to be handsomely rewarded here. I just think that Clay, if he lets his ego get away with it and takes a big money offer to some bad franchise, because I don't think any of the contenders are going to give him a big money deal. He's going to have to go to some awful team like Detroit or Charlotte or Washington who are desperate for a big name. And I just don't want to think he's going to toil away on a bad team. So, guys, I hope he realizes this is the role for him. Lacob was compensating fairly. I think a 3-year, $75 million type deal is more than fair for what he's going to bring. Maybe a little more, bump that up a couple mil. But I think he's got to realize, like Draymond did, that take a little less to be here and retire as a Warrior as opposed to going to some bad franchise like some guys tend to do at the end of their careers. Thanks for the time, fellas.
Yeah, appreciate it, Mark. Mark and Milbrae checking in, 808 KNBR. I'm going to react to that on the other side because I do think there were varying degrees of me agreeing with that. I don't think he's really screwed around with Trayce Jackson-Davis. He's been on Podziemski from the jump, and then Kuminga we could have a conversation about when you talk about Steve Kerr. But if you want to give him a B-, I can't really quibble with B-, but it's B- on the way to being an A-. I'll say that at this point because regardless of how long it took to figure it out, I am on record as saying that the two Kuminga games, the one where he was pulled from the rotation against Portland, the one where he didn't see the floor down the stretch as the 18-point lead against Denver was evaporating, those were pretty bad Kerr management. I don't think it's been nearly as bad consistently like a lot of the Kuminga fans would say, but those were two pretty bad games where it didn't look good for Kerr with them losing the game and Kuminga didn't play, and then Kuminga basically helping flip that game against Portland back in December when he had been the odd man out in the rotation, at least the planned rotation for that game. But, yeah, B- I won't quibble with necessarily, but if this team wins 48 games and stays as hot as they've been over the last few weeks, look out. That B- grade's on its way to being an A because by the end of this thing, if Kuminga and Podziemski are big-time performers, if Chris Paul's able to contribute, if Klay Thompson's accepting of a bench role, Trayce Jackson-Davis is a bench factor, guess what? You may not like the way Steve Kerr handled it, but Steve Kerr gets credit for all of that being a big, fat dub if the Warriors end up pushing to win 48 games. All right, we'll pause here. We'll come back. 808 KNBR, the number. We'll dig into the YouTube chat. Appreciate the back and forth there. Everybody watching on YouTube and Twitch. Live from Harmonic Brewing in Thrive City. Sounds of Silver, fun with numbers. Still time to sneak in some phone calls. It is Dubs OT with JD, KNBR 104.5 and 680, the sports leader.
Did you hear something?
Yeah, like a swoosh.
Yeah.
Dubs OT presents the sounds of silver. Streaming live on YouTube at KNBR 1045.
Oh, for sure. That's what I'm here for. Defend, help the team defend, get a couple buckets and just do what I can, to get the win. But, I take a lot of pride in defense. It's an honor when, your team, assigns you to the team's best player, so you got to take pride in it, and stay competitive.
Happy birthday, Andrew Wiggins. Andrew Wiggins post-game there as we welcome you back. It's Dubs OT with JD. Warriors win 97-84 over Charlotte. 808 KNBR, the number. Still time to sneak in a couple of calls between now and 11 o'clock. Pleasure to be out here at Harmonic Brewing, where Julia and Mike are running the show here tonight. Warriors staying hot. 8 of the last 9, 11-15. They are 29-26. 3 games over 500, the Golden State Warriors. And I got to look at it, Greg. I haven't looked at it, but that's got to be 3 over 500 for the Warriors. That's first time in a long time. Early part of the season, 6-3, 6-2. Going back, I'm looking at it right now.
I think it literally is.
They were 4 under. That was top of my head here. The last time the Warriors were 3 over 500 was 6-3 on November 8th. After they had just lost in Denver on November 8th to fall to 6-3, and then that game we talked about on November 11th, Draymond mixed it up with Donovan Mitchell. Warriors had the awful homestand that began with the loss to Cleveland. They dropped a couple to Minnesota. They dropped a couple of more to OKC. Beat the Rockets to salvage the finale, but they had basically wasted the 6-3 start on that homestand, and it's been, for the most part, an uphill climb since then. And, since the Warriors dipped below 500 on that homestand, the best that the Warriors have been at any point, I'm looking at the best that they've been at any point was 1 game over 500. If I'm looking at this career,
was that on that 5-game win streak back in December?
December 23rd was the only other time they were a game over 500, and so this team's trending in the right direction is the point. But since the 6-3 start, when they gave it all back on that first homestand, the high water mark since then had been 1 game over 500. December 23rd, when the Warriors were 15-14. They had capped that 5-game winning streak right before Christmas, and then they ended up losing 3 in a row from there and dipped all the way to what was a low water mark of 18-22 following the ugly Memphis game on January the 15th. They also were 20-24 they also were 19-24, which was the low water mark after the Laker game, the 2-OT the 2-OT Laker game lost 145-144. But since then, the Warriors have been on a big-time roll, 13-5 over the last 18 since the 2-OT loss to the Lakers on January the 27th.
And that feels like a long time ago, doesn't it?
It does, literally only 4 weeks ago, basically a month ago, and that felt like, is this team going to turn it around? But they have, in a big way, turned it around since then. So what do we got tonight as far as Sounds of Silver, Greg?
We got a full slate. We actually have a lot of people at the podium, so it was fun to pick and choose, because sometimes you just got to get the few guys that have interviewed, but this is good. We got to start with Mr. Contract Extension himself. I said on our tweet for Dubs OT that he was picking up the tab for the whole Bay Area tonight. I hope he's picking up your harmonic tab, JD. Steve Kerr, very heartfelt quote, just talking about how it's been a fun season, yet a challenging season because of the team chemistry, and how he just really likes coming to coach these guys.
This has been a really fun season, challenging season. I know we've lost a number of close games, but as a coach and as a staff, when we see the growth of our young players and we're watching them grow up literally before our eyes, it's a very satisfying feeling, and it's a great group. It's a really wonderful group of players, and I look forward to coming to the gym every day and seeing all these guys. So we have a really fun mix of vets who are Hall of Famers, champions, and then these young guys who are learning and growing, and just feels like the chemistry, the connection within the group is really, really strong, and it makes for a fun team to coach.
Yeah, it's taken a lot to get to that point, Greg, but it does finally feel like Trace Jackson-Davis has a role, and Kuminga has a role, and Podziemski has a role, and it's not infringing upon the veteran players being able to be productive. The veteran players are no longer infringing on the younger players' ability to be productive. It was really clunky to get to this point. There were a lot of twists and turns along the way and uncomfortable moments and times where it looked like it wasn't going to get to the balance that the Warriors currently have. But it does seem like over these last 18 games, they have started to find that proper balance, and it's a big reason why this team is at the high water mark of the season here, almost at the high water mark over the last 3.5 months right now, but also trending in a direction where you're starting to feel like, this team, because of the close losses, maybe is a little better than their record on the surface. They're also playing their best basketball of the season. And, you start to think, Greg, that this team can do something special over these last now 27 games to give themselves a shot to make some legitimate noise in the playoffs. It was a long and winding road, but the Warriors have found I think the right combination, and Steve Kerr gets a lot of credit for that.
And what I hope it teaches them, especially these younger players that haven't been through the gauntlet of the NBA at times, is just to keep fighting, because you're probably going to have a couple of more tough losses on the season. For all we know, the Denver game could be another heartbreaker. I mean, I think that it's not, to go back to what I was talking about with fan discourse, it's not, now they're winning the championship, whereas before they should have torn it all down. I think it's just a reminder to keep fighting, because it has paid off and people do have a role. And as tragic as the Dejan Milojevic passing was, I mean, I hope that was an opportunity for the team to understand that this is just basketball, as bad as it felt to be in that. And, things like players complaining or everybody being frustrated with their role. I think, there's a lot more tougher, more traumatic, more tragic real-life matters that they all had to confront unexpectedly. And now it was a really rough season in a lot of ways. Just keep fighting, because there are going to be tougher moments. There are going to be some hard losses. There are going to be times when players are tired, but now they're at least getting some reward for having gone through just what has been straight quicksand for a couple of months.
What do we got next here, Greg?
We have Draymond Green talking about Steve Kerr. I'm actually going to cue this one up as we go. It's just talking about the winning that he brought to the organization. Of course, Draymond Green was a young player when Kerr arrived, and he basically just called it irreplaceable. So let's get to Draymond.
I think it's incredible. Wouldn't want to finish my time here with any other coach. And what he's meant to this franchise, what he's done for us as players, the winning ways that he brought here is you can't replace that. And so very happy for Steve and his family. Got what he deserves, which is it's the largest salary in coaching history, right?
Indeed it is. $17.5 million for the 2 years. As Greg Popovich makes more, that's been noted by Woj, but Popovich also is the president of basketball operations for San Antonio, so he gets a little bump as far as that goes. Kerr now aligned at number one as far as coaches, above Eric Spoelstra. beneath Popovich, but as far as the coach-only role, number one, and deservedly so for the 4 championships, for the ability to navigate some troubled waters. And make no mistake, we've said it a lot here over the last hour plus as we hit the airwaves here on KNBR tonight. Stephen Curry, Draymond Green, and Klay Thompson want this for Steve Kerr. They are lifers for this Warriors franchise. And, now it's 3/4 of that, with Klay Thompson being the final piece here that the Warriors are going to have to try to come to an agreement with over the next few months.
Well, that's going to bring us to our next cut, because Joe Lacob is going to have a large say in those decisions. And Draymond, again, talking about Steve Kerr, says he wasn't really doubting the fact that there would be an extension because he trusted Lacob to do the right thing. I did find it a little funny because Lacob might have been regretting his decision to give Draymond a contract extension a little bit early in the season. But here's what Draymond had to say.
I know Joe's going to do the right thing. He's done nothing but build that trust with us to know that he's going to do the right thing and what's best and take care of those that have taken care of this organization, and so I didn't really have much doubt.
No, it was all a matter to me of, did Steve want to continue? And I was a little unsure about that a couple of months ago. It did take on a little bit of the Bob Myers vibe, where I got the impression early in the year Bob was just done and leaving. And the reason he was so comfortable in saying, hey, I'm not worried about the future, is because he knew he was going to be out. The old Magic Johnson, I'm not going to be here. That whole thing. And so he didn't want the focus to be on him because he knew what the ultimate decision was going to be. I was getting a little bit of that vibe with some of the tumultuous times, but as things had thawed over the last month and a half, 2 months, and some of the reporting and just talking to some people within the organization, I think the sense was really more confidently, Greg, that it was going to get done as long as Steve wanted it to get done. That it was never going to be an issue about money. It was more just making sure that Steve was fully committed and that everybody was on the same page as far as the direction at which the franchise was going to go, regardless of whether that was more toward a rebuild or continuing to kind of lock in on the fly and trying to maximize the remainder of this Steph prime.
Yeah, I think you said it perfectly when you said that it wasn't, could Steve Kerr get re-signed? It was he going to want to come back? And I think that was sort of the question. And as the season was getting off to a pretty rocky start there, it looked like, hey, maybe he is going to want to leave like Bob Myers did the year before. And there were a little bit of similar vibes around those questions and discussions, although they weren't getting asked maybe quite as frequently, given the ratio of media availability between those two. But a quick interlude, actually, before we get to our next cut. Our final results from our last night's question of the night on Threads about is getting a top 6 seed in the Western Conference realistic for the Warriors. The would-be tough option actually ended up being the most answered at 48%, followed by yes right behind it with 45%. So maybe some of that instant reaction wore off a little bit, but I think in the end, a lot of people sort of gravitated to that category that I know us two were in.
Yeah, it flattened out a little bit. Cooler heads prevailed, I guess. The intoxication off the big victory had calmed somewhat. But, yeah, I still think it's going to be tough to be top 6 because, again, I think this Warriors team over the final 27, they're probably going to have to go 20-7 or 19-8 after they get the win tonight. And I still think that's going to be a pretty tall order. It means they're probably going to have to remain healthy. Did we have one more cut? I think we had one more cut, right?
Oh, we sure did. Am I allowed to play 3 Draymond cuts? Yes, I am, because we had a lot of people speak. But why would I not just take the liberty to play one extra Draymond cut? Big shout out to Kyle Haar for doing the work back in the studio to make sure that we are maximum entertained at all times. Draymond Green spent 3 minutes at the podium talking about Grant Williams in that final scuffle, which seemed meaningless at that point, but of course he did, right? Of course he spent 3 minutes on it. This is just a 38-second clip of what he did have to say. And look, out here in the Bay Area, sometimes all you can do is smile and laugh.
Yeah, I don't really understand why people get so mad at like somebody scoring at the end of the game. It's like this dumb, unofficial, unwritten rule that everybody get mad. Like, if y'all were winning by 13 points, would you get mad if he laid the ball up? I doubt it. And so it's kind of like a sore loser type thing. Like, and, you know, Miles was my guy. That's my little brother, so I'm not going to sit here and go in on Miles. Miles can do no wrong to me. But Grant Williams got to stop it, man. He can't keep being like this tough guy is going absolutely wrong for him.
Draymond on Grant Williams. Yeah, Grant Williams has got an act. There's no doubt. And the Warriors have been in the midst of that act as well, going back to the finals and the matchup against the Celtics. But that's so funny, man.
Hey, JD, it's a good thing that Miles Bridges has done no wrong.
Yeah, that's not – yeah, I wasn't even going to go there. But, yeah, that's – that I was like, really, Draymond? Like, really? Like, on that part of it. But, yeah, you knew he was going to go in on Grant Williams. And yeah, he is building kind of a reputation of being a mix it up guy, fake tough guy, whatever you want to call it. But yeah, even that I think was a little bit of a toned down version of what Draymond can typically offer. Good stuff from Draymond, good stuff from Coach Kerr here on Sounds of Silver tonight. Appreciate it. Great job by Kyle Haar as well. As Greg Silver helping to put all of that together as we do each and every night here on Dubs OT with JD on KNBR, the sports leader. All right, let's have some fun with numbers before we call it a night. I also want to dig through the YouTube chat. Appreciate everybody watching on YouTube and Twitch as well. I've been a little more reluctant to dig into the chat, but I do want to run through some of the best comments here on a Friday night. But let's get to fun with numbers.
But Grant Williams got to stop it, man.
This is Dubs OT with JD. Time now for fun.
I'm a fun guy.
With numbers.
No, I'm just having fun.
On KNBR 104.5 and 680. Streaming live on KNBR.com and the KNBR app.
All right, we got a lot of good numbers tonight, Greg. Warriors now 29-26, third straight win. 8th in the last 9, 16-14 now at home. They've won 4 of the last 5 at Chase Center, including the last 2. Only 11 games to go at Chase Center on the season. We talked about it last night when there were 12 games to go. How many wins do the Warriors need among the final 12? I think they got to go 10-2. Now with 11, I think it's got to be 9-2, 10-1 if this team's going to make a legitimate run at being the 6th seed. They're well on their way, playing better basketball overall. Really good on the road, but winning at Chase tonight to improve now to 16-14 with 11 to go. First time this season, the Warriors did not score 100 points in a game. 97 for the Dubs. First time this season. Indiana is the only team in the NBA that has not been held under 100 a single time. The Warriors' previous season low was the night of the Rudy Gobert-Draymond Green fracas. Warriors scored 101 in that game without Stephen Curry, on 11-14. November the 14th against Minnesota. Warriors had scored 125 in each of the last 4 games. Longest streak since 1989, the Run TMC Warriors era there with Nelly coaching them. Warriors held Charlotte to 84, so good defense tonight. That's a new opponent season low. Warriors held the Rockets to 95 back in October. Warriors now 3-0 when they hold their opponent under 100 points. And the Warriors reserves outscored the Hornets 44-26. Big night for the Dubs bench. 39th time this season for the Warriors that they've outscored the opponent's bench. And how about this one, Greg? The starting lineup of Stephen Curry, Brandon Pajemski, Andrew Wiggins, Jonathan Kuminga, and Draymond Green, 5-0. 5-0 on the season. It's been among the Warriors' best lineups. Steve Kerr putting Klay Thompson on the bench, and that group has yet to lose with Kuminga and Podziemski, along with Steph, Draymond, and Andrew Wiggins. Steph, team high 15 tonight. Odd to see the team high be 15. Draymond, 13 boards. 7th 10-plus rebound game of the season. How about Brandon Podziemski? 13 points, 6 boards, 6 assists. 15th game this year with at least 10, 5, and 5. That is the most among rookies. And Jonathan Kuminga, unfortunate note for Kuminga, although I do think he played pretty well, even though he didn't score. Kuminga had his career-best streak of scoring in double figures end tonight at 34 consecutive games. Kuminga did have 7 boards. He had a career-high tying 6 assists, so again, making an impact in other ways. Even though he didn't score, had 3 blocks and 2 steals. So a nice floor game despite Kuminga being 2 of 9 and only scoring 6 points on the night. Final thoughts from you, Greg Silver, and also let's let everybody know what's coming up tomorrow as far as Just Dubs. We got Giants baseball beginning tomorrow here on KNBR, the Sports Leader, so it's going to be a YouTube podcast-only version of Just Dubs. Let everybody know how they can join in the conversation tomorrow from 10 a.m. until noon.
Yeah, so here's the deal. Like, this is our first year of doing the full JD, Dubs OT, Just Dubs, full shebang, and we are fully committed to it. I know I especially am. I don't know about the rest of the people in here. No, I'm joking. But what I will say is every time there is a conflict with Giants baseball on our airwaves, for Saturdays, Just Dubs, it always will be 10 o'clock where you can find us. It still will be Twitch. It still will be YouTube. It still will be streaming on Twitter. And so it's just not going to be on the airwaves. We will still podcast it as normal. It'll still be the same back and forth. We'll try to have some good segments, possibly get some guest interviews in there too as we go through the home stretch of the season. And we'll just, we'll keep you up to date as it goes. We're still working on being able to take calls on these podcast type of shows that we stream.
We're not gonna have it tomorrow, but that's coming hopefully as soon as next week. That we're gonna have the ability to take calls on Just Dubs. No question about it. So yeah, keep it locked here on KNBR, the Sports Leader. If we don't have a Giants conflict, then we're going to be on the airwaves between now and the end of the regular season. But we're in talks with a lot of different options as far as making the show as interactive as possible. But yeah, catch it on YouTube, catch the podcast. We will be liberal in making sure we tweet it out and put it out on social media. So follow at KNBR, follow at JD John Dickinson, follow Greg Silver as well on all the social media channels, and we'll get everything out to you and let you be able to consume this program.
Well, the last thing I do want to add, too, is that I know with the 49ers and the Super Bowl, that was a very odd week where a lot of our staff was in Vegas, and so we just were spread a bit thin. We will not miss a Dub show for the remainder of this season, whether that ends April 14th or June 20th. 23rd. That's you're right, the 23rd. We will not miss a show. So if it's YouTube only, it's YouTube only. But there will be a show for every single game and every single Saturday in some form. We can promise that.
All right, couple of things here in the YouTube chat. I'm going to go rapid fire here through the YouTube chat. Appreciate everybody chiming in tonight. I've been a little reluctant to dig into the chat tonight. But, yeah, we really appreciate everybody that weighed in. Erwin Kwong, I think JD needs the other half of a Boilermaker. No, I'm good with the Kolsch tonight. Cheers to everybody out here at Harmonic Brewing. Crazy nobody scored 20 in this one. Yeah, I mean 15 being a game high. Drew Down, a lot of good comments from Drew Down. Sarich has struggled lately. We'll edit that one a little bit for radio. JD, over-under on JD Kolsch's tonight. Set it at 1.5. Erwin, set it at 1.5 and take the over. Cheers. It's a long night. Set it at 1.5 and take the over. But under 2.5. So I kind of gave that away. But really appreciate everybody out here at Harmonic Brewing in Thrive City. Hey, if you're coming to the game, any of these games at Chase between now and the final 11, stop by and say hi. We're doing Dubs OT after each and every one of those games here on KNBR, the Sports Leader. So, yeah, appreciate everybody chiming in. A lot of Pajemski comparisons. Steve Nash earlier, a little bit of Jason Kidd vibes from those. Drew Down saying he reminds me more of Manu. Goran Dragic is the guy that he reminds me of. The lefty, can get into the lane, can knock down some shots. That's the player that just from watching the league here for a long time since I was a little kid that he reminds me most of, just kind of watching him. A little bit of a quicker twitch, Goran Dragic as well. Douglas Mikes chiming in on Clay. There's a price point where they can keep Clay and stay out of the luxury tax. I think it's around 17 to 20 million. Overpay, but that's what Lacob wants to do, then whatever. If it's going to be 20 million, it's probably going to have to be 3 years and 20 per, 3 and 60, that kind of a thing. Max Lopez story isn't over for Clay. This team is playing meaningful games in April. He may show his value then. Yeah, I don't think that's totally crazy. Uncle Looney, good to have you. Appreciate you chiming in. Just think how far Grant Williams has fallen. Yeah, Grant Williams, he got paid, nice deal, but he's bounced around a little bit, and he's becoming a little bit of a sideshow, which I think is unfortunate because he has been a productive player over these last few years in his career with Boston and obviously moving on, and he's kind of making the rounds now. Erwin Kwong might be a case of Wiggins and Kuminga taking turns being the number 2 scorer if Wiggins' strong play keeps up. Either way, the Warriors can keep it. I don't think Kuminga has to be the number 2. I think it's been great that he has been for as long as he was. But I think the Warriors are going to have to get balance from a number of different places as far as who the number 2 scorer is. I know there were a few people kind of bandying about the notion that, hey, if Kuminga can't be the number 2, then the Warriors aren't going to go very far. I think the Warriors are better equipped now to be able to withstand not having a consistent number 2. Now that they're starting to get on a little bit of a roll. And so, yeah, Drew Down making a good point. J.K. been taking advantage of the attention he draws, trying to make plays for others. Yeah, he has been very much a willing passer, even though he has been a little bit too perimeter-oriented, I think, these last couple of games. Some of that is teams trying to defend him in a manner where they're not trying to let him get to the basket as much. And so Douglas Mikes chiming in, can we be honest about Kerr? It took a lot finally to get Kuminga his minutes, bench Clay, get Moody his minutes, play Trace Jackson-Davis. Kerr is a good coach, but he's also stubborn as hell. That's fair, but I'm just not one to say Kuminga should have been, like I think some of the tough love on Kuminga was appropriate. Maybe not a couple of those games that I mentioned earlier. Trace Jackson-Davis hasn't earned automatic run every night in this league. He hasn't. Benching Clay is delicate. Like, I know a lot of fans are like, oh, Clay, bench him. Like, bench him 2 months ago. Well, you got to give a guy like Klay Thompson half a year. And you also have to have a legitimate, viable, better option. And Pajemski was not a legitimate, viable, better option until recently. And so, you kind of hit the crossroads as far as making to do it, finding the right time to be able to do it. So, I think there's something to be said for, was Kerr too hard on Kuminga? It was like pulling teeth to have to get Kuminga his minutes, all the rest of it. But I still think some of the tough love has paid dividends, and I'm not going to give Kerr full credit on that, but I do think he gets a partial credit for the way that it's all handled. He developed Poole and Kuminga. And Wiggins took a step as well. So, I do think you have to give Steve Kerr some of his flowers as far as that goes. Carmar, part of J.K.'s struggles recently. He's been getting a ton of double teams. Yeah, he's on the scouting report now. Teams are trying to get the ball out of his hands. Teams are trying to make him shoot from the perimeter because they know that push comes to shove, he kind of wants to shoot the 3 because he thinks he's a good 3-point shooter. And so, we'll see how it all shakes out. But, I think keeping the pressure off Kuminga, you knew there was going to be an inevitable lull. Like, he wasn't just going to average 25 between now and the end of the regular year, but now that this thing is more stable, Kuminga can fluctuate a little bit. He can score 6 points and you can win comfortably, which I don't think we would have said a couple of weeks ago. So it's all kind of falling into place. Greg, great stuff, my man. Appreciate you. Appreciate Kyle Haar. Appreciate everybody on YouTube and Twitch. And looking forward to tomorrow and Just Dubs, YouTube-only podcast version, 10 a.m. sharp. We're going to get this thing rolling here for KNBR, the sports leader.
Big cheers to you, JD. It's been nice to get back into the swing of things. Big thank you to Kyle. And we will be right back at it in 11 hours.
Oh, yeah. I love the quick turnaround. I told you, I'm now that the 49ers are done, you're seeing a whole new JD. You're seeing a whole new side of JD. Stretch run JD is a real thing. We got a lot of big things planned for Just Dubs and a lot of big things planned for Dubs OT. Really looking forward to it here moving forward here with 27 games to go. Appreciate everybody. Joe H., Joe Schmo, Erwin Kwong, Uncle Looney, Carmar, Max Lopez, everybody on YouTube and Twitch as well. Cheers to you, friends. We'll talk to you tomorrow, 10 a.m. Warriors win tonight, 97-84. It's been Dubs OT with JD here, KNBR, 104.5 and 680, the sports leader.
Dempsey, see Micic falling down and a hit the jumper. Micic touched earth. Look at the Warrior bench. That's just like making a game winner.
Clock at 3. Curry, 3.
Some days I think about like homework in school, but then, I got to look and I don't have it.
I love it. I love that guy so much.
This game was ugly.
And I think my answer to anybody that is upset about the contract extension is cry about it.
But Grant Williams got to stop it.
Draymond is like fish sauce. Big, fat dub.